All right, what's up, everyone? It's your man, the Mega Power TV, coming at you live on a Tuesday night, ladies' night. It's a Tomcat Tuesday, and today we're gonna come in a little something different for you. So, kind of one of the things we're talking about. I want to set the stage for you guys tonight. Uh, Big day in sports tonight. So, one of the things I'll just kind of let's backtrack a little bit. So we want to try to get a little more sports action on the channel. So we got to cover a little bit more sports. I'm a big NBA guy, and I've been meaning to cover the NBA more on the channel. If you notice, we kind of took a break for a few weeks. We're kind of back at it again, and I figured, well, gaming right now is what it is. You know, I fell asleep on stream last night, and I closed World of Warcraft. Fell asleep and then left the stream on all night. But hey, that happens. So we're going to keep playing some games and stuff like that. We're going to try to pick that up a little more. The weekend streaming and Funboy Friday just hasn't been popping off like it normally does. I think once wintertime gets into place, we'll probably be doing that a little more. But with the NBA starting tonight, and I figured we need to get some NBA content going on this channel. We're going to try to cover it a lot during this season. And one of my plans is to bring in a correspondent for specific teams. Now, for example, the Likeness Monster, he is a big Bucks guy. So Likeness Monster is going to be like our Bucks correspondent. So my plan is to bring him in. Now, I need to make sure my stuff is updating, because on my end it says that we're still on the main screen, or the loading page. But luckily on YouTube it's updated, so hopefully we're good there. So we're just gonna check Twitch real quick. Zach Rahr is online. Okay, we're good. We're locked in right now, so that's what I wanted to see. You can see we got the Valorant background right now. Nothing too exciting, but my plan is, and that is up. Sorry, I'm a little disorganized here. We're streaming from the living room. So my plan is this year, we're going to try to cover the NBA action. Now, this isn't going to be like an everyday thing, but we are going to try to cover it as much as possible. And so our plan is to bring in, some of our guys that you used to seeing on the show. And who are you used to seeing on the show? Well, you got the Likeness Monster. You got the Boogeyman. You got 8-1 Fizzle, you got Easy-E, and then, you got C-Rage and all the kind of like ancillary characters on the show. But we're going to bring in a couple correspondents for specific teams. Now, we're kind of like a Midwest themed area of the NBA. So, for example, you got a lot of guys covering the East Coast, the West Coast. The Lebitard show kind of covers the Miami Heat area. We're going to kind of focus, we're going to cover it all, but our area is going to kind of be the Great Lakes area, right? Like Chicago, Milwaukee specifically. And I'm going to kind of cover it all, because I really don't have any dogs in this at all. I watch every single NBA team, and I really don't care who wins, other than whatever team LeBron is not on. That's the team that, or what I should say, I'm a fan of every team except one team, and that's whatever team LeBron James is on, if that makes sense. And so kind of what we're going to do, I'm going to have correspondents. I'm going to give my thoughts on a team throughout the year. So, like, let's say we're covering the Milwaukee Bucks. And this is like going to be a pretty big Bucks house here. But we're going to bring in the Likeness Monster to kind of be the correspondent for the Milwaukee Bucks. He's a bit of a homer, and sometimes he gets a little carried away with his love for Chris Middleton. But that's the kind of energy we're looking for. And so we'll bring him in to talk about that. And then we'll also, our Bulls correspondent is going to be 815, a.k.a. the Land of Lincoln, a.k.a. 8-1 Fizzle. And he's going to be the Bulls correspondent. Now, on the flip side, he's a homer for the Bulls, but he's kind of like, instead of being like a happy homer, he's a disgruntled, grumpy, angry homer at the Bulls. Like, I don't know if I've ever actually seen Fizzle actually excited or happy about anything with Chicago sports. and he's like a Bears fan, and he is a Bulls fan, but you wouldn't be able to actually tell. It's just so it's an interesting take. You know, that's what happens though, man. I honestly like I don't blame him for being grumpy. Like if I was like the state of Illinois is kind of a dumpster, and so you know if that I would be just grumpy about that too. And you know they haven't had a lot of success lately. The biggest news in the last 10 years for the Bulls is just remembering Derrick Rose's knee blowing out, and then the Bears. You know we go to the '85 Bears, right? Otherwise, it's been since 1998 for basketball for them, which is crazy to think about that the Bucks have technically had more success in the last decade than the Bulls. Didn't see that coming, but hey, sometimes you strike gold for the Bucks. So we'll have those guys kind of chime in. Now, I'm about to show you guys my NBA preview for the year and my predictions, and we'll go through that. I literally did this in like 5 minutes off the top of my head. It's not going to be well thought out because there's no point to go through it like that, you know, to do these in-depth things because it doesn't really matter in the end. But I'm going to give you my thoughts. I'm going to do the little ups and downs of who I think's hot, who's not. You know, teams like the Spurs, for example, hard to, you know, don't have a clue what to do with them, right? I like 2 players on the team. You got Wembanyama and Solhan, but what else is there? I don't know. Could they sneak into the 10th spot? Who knows, right? So you get down to these. That's the one thing what's weird about the NBA now. You know, with 20 teams making the playoffs, essentially. I know it's the play-in stuff, but it's so easy to get into the playoffs now that teams can really coast quite a bit. So let's get into the preview here. We're just going to go right into it. I didn't really put a record down for these guys, so I'm about to show you guys what it is. So let's do this. Let's jump over. Boom. Look at that. So here we go. We're gonna jump right into the East for you guys right now. Top 10 teams. Now, it could be a little different. And here, these are like my regular season like predictions for what it's going to look like at the end of the year. And there could be some variation, but I'll tell you why I did this off the top of my head. Now, again, didn't think this out very much. I gotta get a drink because I'm a boomer and I have acid reflux when I sleep at night. All right. So let's get into this right here. Let's do this for the short right now. All right, everyone, it's your man, the Mega Power TV, coming at you. And this is my top 10 teams in the Eastern Conference for the 2022-2023 season. First off, the Milwaukee Bucks, the Boston Celtics, Cleveland Cavaliers, the 76ers, the Brooklyn Nets, the Pacers, the Knicks, the Atlanta Hawks, the Miami Heat, and the surprise team coming in at the 10th spot, the Orlando Magic. All right, now that I got that out of my system, that's for clipping and doing a short. So you'll have to bear with me as we're farming this out for content. All right, now to get into this as to what I'm thinking. Again, I didn't put a lot of thought or details into this. This is just top of my head. So we're going to start off with the Bucks. I think they've got a good team. Some of my thoughts on the Bucks, though, I'll pull up their depth chart here on the side. ESPN doesn't always do a great job updating depth charts, but I'm not going to put it up on screen for you guys. So we're kind of focusing on the top a little bit more just for obvious reasons, but obviously you got starting 5, Dame Lillard, Middleton, Giannis, Lopez, and Beasley. Ooh. I get it. He for the regular season, he's a 3-point shooter, so it makes sense a little bit. I'd like to. This is where I was happy about. We'll get into the likeness monster being the Bucks correspondent to break this down a little bit. But one of my biggest takeaways for the Bucks is they needed to get more athletic. And honestly, like just getting rid of Grayson Allen was like two steps forward in my opinion, just by getting rid of him. Beasley can shoot threes, but you're not gonna really see him. You're not gonna really see him on the floor in playoff time. Like he couldn't even get on the floor for the Lakers last year. So I'm hoping this is where by the end of the season, like we see Beauchamp kind of get into that spot. Hopefully Crowder can actually move his body this year and can do something. Connaughton off the bench. I don't mind the second lineup. I think adding Cam Payne was underrated for the Bucks. So the second unit, Cam Payne, Connaughton, Beauchamp, Crowder, and Portis. Everyone does something a little different. Not a lot of shooting in there. Again, you're hoping Beauchamp can really kind of make it to a next step in his second year. My guy Andre Jackson Jr. is not even listed on the depth chart, so I'm not sure if he made the final roster. I mean, my guess is he'll be on like a two-way contract, which won't be bad for him. He just needs minutes. But I think he's a sleeper for them, but that's because I'm an Andre Jackson Jr. guy. Thought he was a steal in the second round. You're getting a team leader on a national championship team. Athletic super freak that'll do whatever he needs for the team to win. You get him in the Bucks culture around guys like Giannis. Like he's like a better version of what Thanasis is, right? And so if you can get any kind of shooting out of him, like, oh man, like that's just like the energy you need in the regular season. Like you come January and February after the break and guys are just dragging, like you need guys like that to come in, boom, bring a little energy to the season. Especially if Crowder just looks like like was carrying a piano around on his back again this year. So my thoughts are on this. I like the Bucks better than the Celtics. Historically, the Celtics have been a better matchup, and that's just because of the wings. And that's where the Bucks have really needed to get some athleticism, and they still just don't quite have it with Beasley and Middleton at the wings matching up with Tatum and Brown. Now, if you just study the tape and watch what the Heat do to the Celtics, especially with Brown, and you realize he's like me, he can't dribble with his left hand, I think that's an area of opportunity for them right there. I think the Bucks are a team that's got to make another move this offseason, or not this offseason, in season. I don't know what that move is going to be, but we got to find a wing. And well, I don't know who that's going to be. I just don't, right? I'm not going to spend my time worrying about it. But I think there's a move to be made there. Get a little more athleticism on this team, and I think that would really help. A lot of people are high on the Brook Lopez re-signing, and same with Middleton, and I was on the other end of like, I don't know. They couldn't have spent it on anything else, so I get bringing him back. But Lopez, essentially, you're looking at it, it feels like you're going to be starting Portis in the playoffs instead. Or maybe not starting, but he would be like your closer, if that makes sense. So sometimes I'm still in this old school mindset. Remember, I grew up in the 90s where like we have centers and power forwards and you actually play real basketball instead of this NBA jam, shooting threes from 50 feet all game long. So I forget that we don't play in a men's league anymore, that we sort of just play in this AAU league in the NBA now. So a little different, but I think like the closeout lineup for this team would be Dame Lillard, Middleton, Giannis, Portis, and this is where I would like it to be Beauchamp, depending on how he progresses during the season. If it's not Beauchamp, you're looking at Connaughton or Crowder. The Bucks are going to be more comfortable with Connaughton down the stretch, because Crowder is about the same level of athlete at this point. Neither of them can get those feet moving. So that's tough. I don't know what that answer would be. It might even be, this is depending on how Cam Payne actually can play. Like to have him on the floor just to be another ball handler, kind of like slicing through a little bit, where Lillard's still staying out of the three, where you're looking for Payne more to drive. That actually might be a closeout lineup there if you think about it. Like you spread it out with Lillard. I know Lillard likes to pound it out, right? So, but you got to hear me out on this. This is might be a weird take, and this is where I can't wait to get Likeness Monster in here, just being like, "Whoa, you're crazy, man! Pat Connaughton's gonna play 30 minutes a game. He's gonna get 15 and 10." And, and, but what I would like to see is that one sec here. You know, if Payne, and I don't want Payne starting, but just think about, I'm just thinking out loud as we're going through. If he can kind of slash a little more and kick it out. Oh, we got the Boogie Man in the building. Boogie Noise in the building. One sec, Clay is just there. These are my predictions. That's right, Boogie Noise. The Claymaker, though, is being a whiner over there. Hey, if that's bothering you, go play something else, bud. So, Boogie Noise, these are my regular season predictions here. This was just off the top of my head. Thoughts out loud, and I'm getting through. Heat at 9 is laughable. I don't know what you mean, because we haven't even got to the Heat yet, but think of it this way, like they're not a regular season team. Whether you finish in the 2 spot or the 7th or 8th spot, I mean 20 teams make the playoffs now. So they're a team that historically coasts through the regular season. Jimmy Butler plays like 60 games. They just try to get in the playoffs and play their best basketball then. They're not really focused on getting a 4 or 3 seed, because it doesn't have any change on the end result of the season. And they've got some guard issues on that team. Kyle Lowry's my age, and he weighs more than me. Boogie, you could be the starting power forward for the Miami Heat right now. So, we're finishing up. We've got the Bucks at the 1 spot, Boston at the 2. Now, we're going to talk Celtics now. I don't like the moves that they made. I don't like Porzingis. I know he's a tall guy that can shoot threes. Yeah, Bam is technically the 4, but they kind of play him at Bam ends up, if you watch the playoffs, Bam is the 4, but he really ends up like drifting out to like the 3 for some reason for them during the playoffs. And they were having to rotate Kevin Love, Highsmith, some other guys in. And they just need a true monster in there, like a Boogie Noise, to take over for Bam, because he just he feels that pressure a little bit. And my man, the Boogie Man, doesn't feel that pressure in the big moment. And so I know if you're in there against Jokic in the finals and he puts his back to you, that the boogeyman's like, man, I've seen this before, man. Like, I'm just giving it to him, right? Like, you get him right in the kidney from behind with a forearm with a little knife edge elbow in there, and you'll be just digging him out. And Bam kind of choked up in that. And my man, the boogeyman, is going to stare the Jokic down and just be like, come on, son. Or Anthony Davis flopping around like a fish on the floor every time he gets touched. And my man Boogeyman's just going to be standing there looking at him, flexing at him like he's Antonio McDyess on the Nuggets. So, I'm thinking Boston comes in at the 2. I wouldn't be surprised at the end of the regular season if they were the 1 seed. I don't know. I like their starting lineup a little better this year than I did last year. I think for them, moving on from Marcus Smart was a really good move, actually. I was surprised that they were able to pull that off. They're a bad matchup for the Bucks still. We talked about this earlier. The wing spot. And so the Bucks have got to get a little more athletic. But again, when it gets to the playoffs, you're talking about matchups. And so if you're the Bucks, you're hoping maybe they match up against the Heat. For whatever reason, the Heat seem to have Boston's number, even though this Heat's a weaker Heat team than yours. I think Boston. if everyone stays healthy on both teams, I think we're looking at a Boston-Milwaukee Eastern Conference final, depending obviously how, if they're the 1 and the 2, right? So Boston's starting lineups projected as Holiday, Derek White, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Porzingis. It makes sense. Horford's too old to really be starting. Now maybe they slide him back in there. He's listed as day-to-day. Their bench, Peyton Pritchard, double P. Who else? They've got, they're about 6 deep on this team. And then you're looking at rookies like Jordan Walsh participating. Sam Hauser. Yeah, again, tough matchup. I would most likely lean towards Boston in a 7-game series, even though I don't like Porzingis at all. I think you got a stiff in Brook Lopez. You got a stiff in Porzingis. Porzingis is a better shooter on the outside. I think that's where Bobby Portis actually slides in at that matchup for them. And so so then you're looking at that Derek White, Jrue Holiday matchup. Now the good thing is, like, Damian Lillard can't play any defense. So Damian Lillard reminds me of me, except I've got a little more clutch gene than Damian Lillard does, but we play about the same amount of defense. So that's there. So I think that's a good matchup. Those kind of, like, because Jrue can't shoot and score, and so then Lillard gets bailed out right there. So then you're looking at the Derek White shooting guard matchup, and I think that's where the versatility comes in, because Beasley sucks for Milwaukee. I don't care what Likeness Monster says. Beasley's awful. He couldn't see the floor in Minnesota. Couldn't see it in LA. I think he was on the Jazz. It just sucks. Now he's going to be a starter in Milwaukee, and it's like, oh. So I think that's where they would get him. So my thoughts are, if it came down to matchups, I think Boston beats Milwaukee, and I think there's some other teams that could beat the Celtics, but I'm not going to pick them to go to the finals, though. So I can't do it. If they ended up in the finals, I wouldn't be surprised. My thing with Milwaukee is I know Middleton's not going to stay healthy. Giannis has been starting to get more and more nicked up year after year. He needs to get on that LeBron bullroid stuff. Just take the steroids right in the rear end and just roid up. Get the blood doping in there. Take the HGH, the testosterone replacement. All the stuff that LeBron's been injecting himself with for decades. Just get on that regimen, and then he'll be okay. And stop wearing low-cut shoes. That drives me nuts. The guy's legs look like they're going to snap apart every time because he's wearing these low-cut shoes. Now, I know that the data says that low-cut shoes don't have any overall impact on that, but just wear some damn big shoes, please. So, moving on. This is where the tier drops off in the Eastern Conference. And the reason I put Cleveland here, I don't like Cleveland. They've got mini guards. My man Boogie could literally, knock out, push around all of their guards. But I do, and it's interesting because I don't mind them, but I don't like Garland. He's a nice player, right? Let's see. Let's get their depth chart pulled up here. Depth chart for Cleveland. So we're looking at Garland, Mitchell, Strus, Mobley, and Jarrett Allen. I like Evan Mobley. He's kind of like, this is a hot take right here. I'm going to do this for the short. What, buddy? You want some food? What do you want, bud? Oh, you could say, I want some fruit snacks, Daddy. All right, boys, I'll go grab this kid some fruit snacks. We're doing it live. computer, okay? Do you want to play Roblox or do you want to look at timers? Okay, I'll help you. Mm-hmm. Here you go. Okay, look at these. Oh, come on. Why didn't you want to do that? Here you go. Alright, I'm back. Now this is for the YouTube short, so let's get ready. What's up everyone, it's your man, the Mega Power TV, and I'm talking about Evan Mobley of the Cleveland Cavaliers. And you know what my thoughts are on Evan Mobley? He's a poor man's Bam Adebayo. So we'll post that as a short later. Try to get some heat going on the channel. But he hasn't developed at all. And it's not that he's not a good player. He just hasn't taken that next level yet. And so he was 16-9 last year, 2 assists a game. He's got to step that up a little bit. 16 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 assists for a top 3 pick. You got to get more from the guy. It's sort of like he's in the Scotty Barnes camp. Like, I'm going to do a thing on him and Scotty Barnes. Memo to these guys. It's time for them to step it up in year 3. But I don't like this roster. Garland, Mitchell. You got 2 mini-me's at guard. Strus. My man Strus. I'm a Strus guy. But he choked in the playoffs last year. And there was a game where he saved him. But for the rest of it, Strus, my man. Good man. Talk about hot and cold. And then Mobley and Jared Allen. Then off the bench, Karis LeVert, not a fan. Okoro, not a fan. Niang, not a fan. Damian Jones, not a fan. Tristan Thompson, still surprised he's in the league. Ty Jerome. The reason I have them at the 3 spot is honestly, I feel like position on this slot 3 through 9 are all interchangeable. If you told me the Atlanta Hawks finished in the 3rd spot, I would be like, yeah, that makes sense. If you told me the Cavaliers finished in the 9th spot or the 8th spot, I'd be like, yeah, makes sense. Or if Brooklyn finished 3rd or Philly finished 3rd, I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. So I'm not going to go through all of these teams' rosters because I don't really think it matters that much, and I don't want to sit here for 3 hours going through it. 76ers, Fat Boy Harden's not going to play for them apparently. Who knows, right? Who cares? That guy's a bum. Doesn't play winning basketball. Never has, never will. Now he's older, fatter, and more useless than ever. The guy no-shows in big games. Just literally has never played one minute of winning basketball. I would never have paid him a single dollar. I never would pay him $1 in the future. I wouldn't have him on my team. He's a weirdo. You look at him, he's got long, dirty fingernails too all the time. And it's just winning basketball is not a priority to him. And he just doesn't seem that intelligent either. Like, he's mad at the 76ers and Daryl Morey, but he opted into a deal where he could have walked away as a free agent. And it all comes down to money. He was probably promised something under the table and is all mad about that. And it's just like, nah, dude. What, bud? Yeah, you can eat your cat fruit snack. Good job, buddy. One of the things of doing it live. And so Let's take a look at the 76ers roster right now. You know, he quit on their coach last year. So they fired. Oh, why is the dude's name not coming to my head right now? Former Celtics coach, Magic coach, was in the NBA. He's got the Cookie Monster voice. Oh man, why can I not think of his name? Good God, we'll move on. So they brought in a new coach. So you're looking at Pat Bev possibly starting, maybe DeAnthony Melton. Then you got Maxey, Tobias Harris, PJ Tucker, Joel Embiid, Oubre Jr., and then, again, maybe a little Danny Green. Oh man, I would not be. I'm not a fan of this team even with Harden. And so if they finished third in the East, I could see it. If they finished 8th, 9th, or 10th, I'd get it. Yo, Lester Tan on Facebook with the like. What's up, brother? So we're coming in. I think this is, again, if you're new to the stream right now, we're just talking. I'm talking about basically 3 through 9 right now in the East. I think all these teams are interchangeable. That's kind of my main thought. If one of these teams finished in a different spot, it really wouldn't surprise me. And so we're kind of covering Philly a little bit. I don't like their. I'm just not a fan. Maybe Nick Nurse gets a little more something out of them, but who knows? Brooklyn. I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time on Brooklyn. If there was any team in the league I was less interested in than Brooklyn, I don't know who that would be. Let's take a look at their depth chart here. Oh, God. Nick Claxton, Cam Johnson, Mikal Bridges, Dinwiddie, Ben Simmons, Dennis Smith Jr., Cam Thomas, Royce O'Neal, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Deron Sharp. Dorian Finney-Smith is a guy that needs to get traded to a contender. I actually like Dorian Finney-Smith. He's just been on some bad spots, like having to play with Luka. Now he's on this team. I would like to see Finney-Smith on the Bucks. That would be cool. He doesn't bring enough shooting or anything, so it doesn't necessarily solve what they need. But I just like Finney-Smith. We're moving on from Brooklyn. Who cares about Ben Simmons, too? Another one of these quitters in basketball that gets paid a lot of money, doesn't play an inch of winning basketball, and just not there upstairs, just like Harden. So we'll move on to the Pacers. This is a team that I know I am higher on the Pacers than I should be. And that's my own fault here. Last year they didn't make the playoffs. I have them projected to make the playoffs now, and I have them at a 6 seed, which feels like a stretch now that when I'm looking at it now. But I'm going to have to roll with it. I've got them locked in the East at the 6th spot. And I really think it comes down to Halliburton's health. He's had a hard time staying healthy. He's constantly nicked. Now, he plays a lot, but he is nicked up a lot. When I'm looking at their starting 5, it makes me a little worried about their pick, and I'll explain why. Halliburton and Mathurin. I like Mathurin's going to be a ball-chucking shooting guard. Bruce Brown, just going to be a 3, not even really a 3, but sort of like a swing. And then this is where it gets weird. Power forward Obi Toppin and center Miles Turner. And then they drafted Jarris Walker at power forward. And then their backup center power forward is Jalen Smith. So this is a team that has 4 big men that just doesn't necessarily work in today's AAU style of NBA basketball. So with Buddy Hield, Andrew Nembhard, and McConnell coming off the bench. So I don't feel good about my pick necessarily. I like this team. And maybe that's just because of the try hard personalities of this team, and that's why I'm like thinking they're going to be good. But really, when I put them at the 6th seed, if I told you they finished 45 in, or like 42 and 42, that doesn't get me to 82 games if I do the math right. But there's playing games and stuff like that I'm factoring, right? So if I told you these guys finished 40 and 45, 45 seems too high. I'm going to stay at the 40 spot. Like 40 and 40 for this team with 41 and 41, kind of that 42 wins to 38 wins. That wouldn't be very surprising. Like, I think that's where my thought process was. And that's kind of where I'm at with a lot of these teams. If these teams all, here we go, I'm putting it in the thoughts. If all these teams won 42 games, would you be surprised? And my answer is no. If the Cavs won 42, all the way down my list to the Miami Heat, and they said, hey, they won 42 games in the regular season, I'm like, okay, makes sense. And so, and even like the Chicago Bulls could win 42 games. I think they need to blow that roster up, and I think they're not going to do it this year. They should, but I don't think they're a playoff team. They could easily make the play-in tournament, because I think a team that is on my radar for a blow-up as far as just things not working well is the New York Knicks. And I think that was also sort of my reason for sliding the Pacers up. I think there's a lot of opportunity, even though I don't know what Obi Toppin and Bruce Brown and Jarris Walker bring to this team. They needed some more, I guess, they're an athletic team now, so that helps. But we'll see what happens. I think it'll actually be a fun League Pass team to watch. So there's kind of like a sleeper watch candidate in the East. They're not going to make a run in the playoffs. This is if they make the playoffs, they're gone in the first round. So like, let's say in traditional playoff time, the Pacers would be going against the Cavs in the playoffs. I think the Pacers would actually give them a series, but I still think the Cavs would pull that series out. But who knows, right? So it'll be fun to watch this team. They're going to just be, again, we're kind of like the Great Lakes area, Indianapolis. We're going to just call it the Big Ten country, essentially, right? I hate the Big Ten, but here we are, watching teams from Indiana, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, all that kind of stuff. So we'll kind of have to keep an eye on it. I mean, we'll have to come up with a name for the podcast too, like the Mega Power Great Lake Pod, something like that. I would, side note, I wish the city of Chicago would stop using Lake Michigan as their toilet, but that's kind of par for the course of what the state of Illinois would do. Anyways, here we go. Moving on. We're going to go to the New York Knicks. This is a team that I think overachieved last year. And I like some of their players too. I like Jalen Brunson, but here's their starting five. Brunson, Grimes, RJ Barrett, Randall, Robinson. This is going to be a hot take for Likeness Monster, but I think Mitchell Robinson sucks. I don't like him. I think he sucks. Julius Randle. I think he's an ball-jacking power forward. He's kind of like what Antoine Walker was when I was a kid. RJ Barrett, coincidentally, might have been the best pick of his draft out of the top three. And that's not because he's necessarily overachieved. It's just because the bar has been set so low by Zion and Ja that when you go and look at RJ and you're like, yeah, he's getting about 20, 25 and 2 a game. You're like, oh, that's not so bad. But then when you actually watch him play, whoo, if you want to watch some ugliness on a basketball court, watch RJ Barrett play. I actually liked RJ coming out of college. One of my mistakes that I made on projecting him was that I thought he was a better athlete than he was. And I I don't know if that dude could jump over like a 20-inch hurdle or a cone. I said a cone 20 inches high. I've never seen a guy lack athleticism like him. It's really weird. It's like Jimmy Butler, but even like less athleticism than Jimmy shows at times. And so this team, they're kind of stuck. You know, they've got Quickly, DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, and Hartenstein coming off the bench. I don't know what they can do. And so this team to me is an average East team that's going to win 40 to 45 games. Probably make the playoffs. If they had some injuries, I wouldn't be surprised if they were in the play-in tournament on the outside looking in. They were a fun team to watch in the playoffs this year. And even though I think New York City and any teams from New York City are essentially just a trash pit, it's good for the NBA when they're a good team. And it was fun when they were contending in the playoffs last year. So I just think the Robinson, Randall, Barrett trio, they gotta shake that up, and I don't know how you do that. I feel like Julius Randle should just be on the Hornets getting tons of stats. Like if there was a way, I don't know what kind of trade you could pull off for this team. But I wonder if you could steal like a Mark Williams or the center from the Pistons instead. Was it Jalen Duren? I know he'd be basically the same as Mitchell Robinson. I'm just not a Robinson guy. But if you could find a way to move something for someone out there that could play. Is there anyone on Portland that they could steal? Not really. This is a team that could have really used. You know, when that trade went down for Toppin for Duarte, but Duarte ended up on the Kings. Why weren't the Knicks in on Duarte? I get it that they were trying to make room probably to get DiVincenzo, right? But I would rather have Duarte than DiVincenzo. I'm just not a DiVincenzo guy at all. Just to have a little more size, a little more wing and shooting. And again, I'm not saying Duarte is good, but they're another one of these teams where there's just not a lot of athletic wings in the league. And it's like why Jaylen Brown just got a giant contract even though he can't dribble with his left hand. So let's move on to the Atlanta Hawks. You know, originally when I made my predictions with this, I had the Hawks. I'd forgotten about the Hawks. And I put together my top 10, and I had like a missing spot. And I was like, who the hell did I forget? And I was like, oh, I forgot about the Atlanta Hawks. And I'm like, that's right. The Atlanta Hawks exist. And looking at their depth chart, Trae Young, not a fan. I think he's just a ball-jacking black hole. DeJounte Murray, I don't mind him. I think they should get rid of Young and go with Murray as the guard instead of having him play shooting guard. Here we are. DeAndre Hunter, always hurt. They've got him listed as a small forward again. Poor man's Bam Adebayo. It'd be better, more of that like this stretch 4 as opposed to a 3. Sadiq Bey and Clint Capella. I don't know what you're doing there with those guys. The bench, Patty Mills, old Bogdan Bogdanovic needs to get traded to another team. He should be on the Bucks, right? Like that's the reality. That's too bad that trade didn't go through. AJ Griffin, Jalen Johnson, Okongwu. I don't like this team. If you told me they finished 3rd in the East, I'd be like, well, it's because the East sucks. And if you've told me they missed the playoffs, I'd be like, well, Trae Young sucks. Doesn't play winning basketball. And so that'd be another trade candidate if I was looking to blow up my roster. or steal something. I don't know where I would send him, but if I was the Hawks, I'd be taking a hard look at that and thinking, like, what can we do with this guy? Like, where can we send him? What can we get for him? Let's make a move. Let's keep going. The Heat. It hurts me because I like the Heat. I like Heat culture. I think losing Gabe Vincent hurts. Losing Strus sort of hurts. See, your projected starting lineup is... Oh, man. Kyle Lowry. Tyler Hero. Josh Richardson. Jimmy Butler. And Bam Adebayo. With Kevin Love and Thomas Bryant coming off the bench. Along with, like, this is where guys like Caleb Martin, Duncan Robinson, Highsmith, they inked Drew Smith to their 12th spot. Jaime Jaquez is going to obviously be playing because the truth is Jimmy sits during the regular season quite a bit. Kevin Love's going to sit quite a bit. So you're going to see a lot of Jaquez. You're going to see a lot of Caleb Martin and Duncan Robinson. The guard situation for them is horrible. Tyler Hero, hasn't been able to play in the last 2 playoff series. I weigh more than that dude does. I really thought they were going to move him, but I think he was the piece in the Lillard trade that they couldn't move. I don't know why Portland technically wouldn't have done that deal, but maybe just they kicked the tires on Hero and couldn't find interest in Hero from other teams, and so then they went with the Holiday trade and then moved Holiday for some more stuff, and so that was sort of like the reason why. But here we are. I think this is a team that is going to just try to get through the regular season and then try to make a run for the playoffs. It's interesting. I thought this would have been like a good campaign team. Bucks scooped them up. So be interesting to see what they do. RJ Hampton was actually a sneaky, nice pickup for them. Again, I know we're talking RJ Hampton, right? So what was he on Orlando last year? I had him on my fantasy roster a couple different times, and he had some good, couple good games. So I think that guy, you'll be like, wow, RJ Hampton in the middle of January had a 20-point game. So I think this is a team that sneaks into the playoffs, and then we see if they go on another Heat run, right? The zombie Heat. So it'll be fun to see. Now my 10th spot. Turn on the short camera. All right, everyone, it's your man, the Mega Power TV. And my upset sleeper pick to make it into the playoffs here in the Eastern Conference. In your 10 spot, the Orlando Magic make it into the playoffs, into the play-in tournament, and possibly make some noise depending on who their matchup is, and might find a way to sneak into the playoffs. There we go. So, let's go over to the Orlando Magic. That's the funny thing with these like shorts. It's like literally no information, and it's just say whatever you want and hit the eject button before 30 seconds. All right. Here's my the Orlando Magic. I'm not a Fultz guy. I'm not a Jalen Suggs guy. I like Wagner. Banchero I don't like Wendell Carter Jr. I don't like Cole Anthony. How is Gary Harris still in the league? How is Joe Ingles still in the league? How is Jonathan Isaac still in the league? How is Mo Wagner still in the league? Obviously, Anthony Black is going to come in. There are 2 rookie picks, Anthony Black and Jet Howard. I'm not a Jet Howard guy. I did like Black at Arkansas. He needs to lose some weight, though. He's a heavy dude. I was surprised. I think he's listed at like 6'6", like 230, 220. Like thick guy. He's got to thin it down a little bit, young man. But he's just a big guard. So I think like, where he slides in for them, Suggs has got to be the odd man out, right? He's been a letdown, which anyone I could see that coming a mile away watching him at Gonzaga. But there we are. But I've got them in the 10 spot, and the reason why the Hornets are awful, the Wizards are awful, Detroit maybe, but Cunningham can't stay healthy. The Raptors, I think we're going to see a giant fall for the Raptors. The Bulls could easily be in the 10 spot. Theoretically, if you actually made me bet on this, do I think the Bulls are more likely to get to the 10 spot than Orlando? I do. But after a while, like, I just don't think running it back with that Bulls team is going to do anything for Chicago. They're going to try to compete because that's what they're going to do. We'll move on to the Bulls roster. But this is sort of projecting like Banchero takes another step. Wagner continues to be Wagner. He's on my fantasy team, so we're hoping for a lot of good things from him. You know, Black starts to take over. And then they sneak into the playoffs as a 10 spot. It's probably less likely to happen than more likely. So we'll see. What's up, bud? Give me a high five.
Look.
Yep.
It's beeping.
Good job, buddy.
Look, it's beeping, Dad.
Yep.
It's beeping.
All right, now we're going to go to the 10, or the West. We're just going to move on. We're going to turn on the camera again. All right, everyone, it's your man, the Mega Power TV, coming at you with his Western Conference predictions for the 2023-24 season, the regular season. First, I've got the Denver Nuggets, followed by the Sacramento Kings, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Los Angeles Lakers, the Timberwolves sliding in at the 5 spot, and I think the Golden State Warriors, Phoenix Suns, and Clippers and Grizzlies are all trending down, with my 10 spot sneaking in the Utah Jazz. All right. So let's break this down a little bit. Let's just start with the bottom up. I didn't have a clue what to do with the Spurs. Portland, same. It'll be fun to watch Sharp and Scoot Henderson, so I'm going to try to watch Portland. And I think DeAndre Ayton's going to be padding stats. Mavericks, I don't like the Mavericks. I don't like the way they play basketball. I don't like Kyrie Irving at all. And I like Luka, but I know it's not like he's not like... I don't like the way he plays basketball, which is weird because I like him. It's kind of like a different version of James Harden. But I think Doncic has at least got more of a clutch gene than Harden. I don't know why I look like Luka Doncic, but I'm not playing basketball 7 days a week in the NBA. I think that's a little weird. His body composition is the same as mine. And again, I'm almost 40 and he's in his early 20s. And so again, you don't want to have body fat like a 40-year-old boomer with kids that, you know, is a weekend warrior in the gym for basketball. So I think there's a problem there. I don't like their team. The Pelicans, I think the Pelicans made a huge mistake 2 years ago of not moving on to Zion when they could. Honestly thought they could have got Kevin Durant last offseason offering Zion, and then they didn't. And I think that's a huge mistake. I think their mistakes have been buying in on Brandon Ingram as well. And also, I get the McCollum trade, but I'm not a CJ guy. I just don't like their team, which is too bad because I like Herb Jones. If they were all guys that could stay healthy, I would like their team a little more. Looking at their depth chart, McCollum, Ingram, Herb, Zion, Valanciunas. Not a Valanciunas guy. I like their rookie draft pick out of UConn, Hawkins, more. I just don't like this team. I know they extended Trey Murphy. He's always hurt. Zion is always hurt. Ingram is always hurt. So I wouldn't be surprised at some point during the season you're looking at a roster of like CJ, Hawkins, Herb, Trey Murphy, and like Nance Jr. and Valanciunas out there. So I think they're a 35 win team and below. I don't see what it is with people that like Zion. I couldn't see it in college because I knew like you just can't. He walks weird. Look at how the guy walks. Like that's not the way an NBA body is, and it's been so obvious. I've never believed in him. I never will, and it's just not like you don't get hurt at 20 and 21. Like okay, you can blow a knee out and stuff like that, right? But like you don't have these just weird I'm a fat ass injuries at 21 unless you're a fat ass at 21. And he just happens to play basketball. And so I'm not going to buy in on him. And so we're going to move on. The Rockets were an interesting team, right? They signed Van Vliet. I don't know why they signed Dylan Brooks. Jabari Smith has got to take another step if he really needs to develop more. You got Thompson that they drafted. I think they got to move Jalen Green. Jalen Green is another guy that should just be in Charlotte, just padding stats, playing bad basketball. So they got to move on from him. The Utah Jazz is who I put in my 10th spot. And I think the Jazz are going to sneak into the playoffs. Looking at their depth chart right now, so ESPN, this isn't going to be what their depth chart is. So ESPN has it projected as Clarkson, Horton Tucker, Markkanen, Collins, and Kessler. I think you're going to see Sexton probably in there. And then Keontae George instead. Rookie. I think George is going to take over the starting spot and going to be the main guy on this team. Besides Markkanen. Collins is just like one of these athletic bigs. I actually don't mind John Collins. I thought he was like I thought he would have been like a potential just athlete for the Bucks to get, but they couldn't make the deal for him. He had a big contract too for some reason. I think this is like a 39 to 42 win team, sleeper team, and sneaks into the 10th spot. The West is going to be a lot of these. There's going to be a lot of teams winning in this conference. And so, but I think they make the playoffs. And I think George plays well. Is it Abaji? I can't ever say his name. See what he can do in year 2. Clarkson is better suited as like a 6th, 7th man ball chucker. I'm not a Talen Horton Tucker guy. So I think that's where Horton Tucker comes off the bench. George slides in. Sexton at the point guard. Makes more sense. Looking at anything else on this roster that stands out. Nothing really. If they didn't make the playoffs, I wouldn't be surprised. But I think in the opposite of Orlando, which is crazy because technically Orlando has more talent and is in a weaker conference. But I would actually say that I think it's more likely that the Jazz make the playoffs than the Magic make the playoffs, even though the odds would tell you that the Magic are more likely. But I'm just a believer. And I think that has to do with I'm not a believer in a lot of these teams in the West, and we'll get into that. The Grizzlies were like the 2 seed last year. There's a lot of people that are still real high on the Grizzlies. I'm not. Not a believer in this team. Depth chart. Let's go take a look. Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane, Zaire Williams, Jaren Jackson, and Xavier Tillman. Obviously, we all know Ja's situation. That's the big factor, right? If he's back, then Ja starts in at the point guard spot. And then, depending on what you do you slide Zaire out or Bane out and have Smart be the 6th man? You know, that's kind of where that would come in. But as it stands right now, he's not on the team yet. So then you're looking at Kennard coming off the bench with, Derrick Rose can't play anymore. So you're looking at what? Roddy, Aldama, Lofton Jr. No, I'm good. And then, Steven Adams is out for the year. I don't like this team. Their other backup center tore his Achilles. So you're betting on Ja getting his head together, which I don't think is possible. I've not been a Ja guy. I think he's like a lower version of a young Derrick Rose, and it's not that he hasn't been good. It's just not high on him. I'll fix it in a little bit, bud. Set it on your box, and I'll fix it. So I'm not in on the Grizzlies. If they make the playoffs, great. I could see them honestly falling out of the playoffs depending on the Ja situation. I think Smart is cooked. I don't like Zaire. I don't like Tillman. Bane, I don't mind. He's had a hard time staying healthy lately too, so hoping he can stay healthy. I wouldn't be surprised if they're a team that with some injuries just falls out of the playoffs altogether. And then one of these other teams sneaks in the playoff round. I don't think it. I don't know what to do with the Spurs. Could they sneak in? Maybe. I don't trust how much playing time the Spurs are going to let their young guys play. So let's move on. Clippers. So I have the Suns and the Clippers. These two teams, and I'll explain why, I could easily put at my 2 and 3 spot, but I think they're too dependent on guys that have injury history where they'll slide down. Do we really need to get into the Clippers? But I'll pull them up quick. The one move I'll say is they committed to Terrence Mann being in the starting lineup, which I've been saying for years that Terrence Mann should be a starter on that team. And I don't know why they didn't see it. It was a target that I thought the Bucks should go after. It was so obvious that he was one of their better players on the team, and yet it took them years to be like, oh yeah, we're committed to Terrence Mann. It's like, how did you not seen it? So they're looking at starting Westbrook, Paul George, Terrence Mann, Kawhi, and Zubac. I actually like that starting five. Admittedly, I'm not a Westbrook guy, but he's actually pretty durable. He plays hard. He's like a better version than Bones Highland, obviously. And then their bench is Highland, Norman Powell, Kenyon Martin Jr., Covington, and Batum. Plumlee. I think Plumlee sucks. I think Covington sucks. I think Powell is okay. Kevin Martin is okay. Batum is a solid player, actually. He's old, though. But again, you're talking about counting on Kawhi Leonard and Paul George to stay healthy. Let's call this what it is right now. Over under. Do you think, if you had to bet that Kawhi Leonard plays 55 games, same with Paul George. If you had to bet your life on one of them. All right, turn on the camera. What's up, everyone? It's your man, the Mega Power TV, and I got a crazy hypothetical for you. Your life's on the line, and you got to pick between one of the two. Kawhi Leonard and Paul George to play more than 55 games this year in the regular season. Who do you pick? I couldn't do either one, but I would have to lean on Paul George, and just hope for the best. So this team, on paper, at some point during the season, we're going to be looking at Terrence Mann, Westbrook, Powell, Plumlee starting with Batum in there, and they're going to finish the season with 42 wins somehow, and it's going to be like, what's going on? Same with Phoenix. I think Phoenix doesn't have any depth. Beal's already listed as hurt, which is going to be the way it's going to be all season long. So you're looking at Beal, Booker, Okagi, Durant, Nurkic. Nurkic is going to be hurt. Grayson Allen sucks. Eubanks sucks. They've got Eric Gordon, so you're going to be looking at like probably Eric Gordon, Booker, Durant at some point. I could easily see this team slipping down even more. Like if Kevin Durant gets hurt, and if it seems like it's more of when he gets hurt. Same with Nurkic. If this team was like hovering on a 9 and 10 spot by the end of the season, I would not be surprised at all. This is a team that, and this is why I reflected them in the rankings, I would be more likely to bet on them than I would the Clippers and the Grizzlies, but it would be a risk. And a team that I think is cooked as well is the next team on the list, the Warriors. I think it. Turn on the camera. Let's check their depth chart real quick. So their starting lineup projection doesn't make any sense to me. Chris Paul, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, and Draymond Green. We know Green's hurt right now with an ankle. So you're looking at Looney, Kuminga, Payton, Moses Moody, Dario Saric. All right, camera's on. What's up, everyone? It's your man, the Mega Power TV, coming at you with my preview of the NBA regular season. We're talking about the Golden State Warriors. I think this team is officially cooked. If they are a one and done team in the playoffs. If they make the playoffs, and I think it's over for this team. No, I actually think Chris Paul is going to be an upgrade for them off the bench with running an offense to hopefully set up Moody and Kuminga. But this is a team that, imagine if they just drafted Halliburton instead of Wiseman. Or what's the dude from Baylor on the Kings instead of Moody? Just they've gotten no contributions from their draft picks. Their guys keep getting older. Klay Thompson looked completely washed in the playoffs last year. Wiggins, head case. Green, head case. Looney, I'm not a believer in this team. They're a team that if all of a sudden towards the end of the season they were sitting at the bottom, I wouldn't be surprised of this playoff tree. Moving on to a team, believe it or not, I had the Timberwolves in as my number 3 team when I did this at the first time, and I dropped them down 2 more slots. But that's where I had them. And it doesn't make any sense, but that's... If I had the reason they're here, if I had to bet on this team, I'm more comfortable with the Minnesota Timberwolves than I am the Golden State Warriors, the Phoenix Suns, and the LA Clippers, and the Memphis Grizzlies. That's why they're here at this spot. Conley Jr., Anthony Edwards, Jaden McDaniels, Karl Anthony Towns, and Rudy Gobert, with Naz Reid, Kyle Anderson, Alexander Walker, Brown Jr., Shake Milton off the bench. Wow. I know people talk about basically the 3 centers on this team, and I get it. I thought this was should have been a team going after Damian Lillard. If they could have found a way to get Portland to take Karl Anthony Towns, I think that would have been a good move for them. But it didn't happen. I would have liked to have seen Jaden McDaniels in the playoffs with this team. If this is a healthy team and Ant-Man takes another level, I think they really need another guard. But Kyle Anderson to me is basically another center. I like a lot of these guys. I wish they were on different teams, but here they are all together. They play hard. They're going to try to win. I actually don't mind that Karl Anthony Towns is out of his mind and thinks that their team is great. That's what you need. I don't know what to do with Gobert, but he's on the team. But I would feel more comfortable betting on them to finish here than I would the other team. So, And they gave Denver a good look in the playoffs. Now, they didn't win a lot, but still, I thought they gave them a better look than most of these other teams. So they are one of my sleeper teams in the West. Well, let's move on to the Clutch Sports Lakers. All right. My least favorite team in the entire NBA. D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, LeBron James, Jared Vanderbilt, Anthony Davis with Gabe Vincent, Taurean Prince, Rui Hachimura, and Christian Wood coming off the bench. They also added Jackson Hayes and Cam Reddish, which those guys aren't going to do anything. I thought they should have played Vanderbilt more in the playoffs last year. Russell, obviously, they're going to take off the floor in big game situations and put in Vincent because he's more trustworthy. I thought that all the moves that they made were like really good moves for what they had. One sec. What, buddy? Let me finish this, okay? I will help you in a little bit. I'm almost done, bud. Yep, keep playing. What it comes down to is this team's health. LeBron's going to coast through the regular season. Anthony Davis is going to try to get through the regular season. But what you saw in this AAU generation of basketball, with every player in this league being like 25 and under and being like under 200 pounds, is that LeBron and Anthony Davis are just physically bigger and stronger than all these other players. And like in the end, it's just this teeny bopper league of twigs, and no one can stop LeBron still because he gets roided up and does his thing. And I think Hachimura is not underrated, but again, he's a big body guy, 6'8". Vanderbilt plays hard, 6'8". Prince plays hard again around the, like, what is he like? He's got to be like 6'6", 6'7". And, regular season D'Angelo Russell will get you some buckets. But I think the Gabe Vincent move, so like I think your closeout lineup for the playoffs is Gabe Vincent, Austin Reeves, LeBron, Anthony Davis, and I actually think Taurean Prince will play over Vanderbilt. I actually like Vanderbilt better, but Prince is... Last year he was like a 10 points, 2 rebounds. He should be rebounding at a higher rate than this. He actually shoots threes more than I thought, or at least had a better percentage than I thought. He's a 38% three-point shooter. I don't think of him as a three-point shooter. He's listed at 6'6", 218. Vanderbilt is listed at 6'8", 214. That's kind of what I thought. Yeah, I did know he was taller. Definitely rebounds at a higher rate. Three-point shooting is non-existent from Vanderbilt. I think Vanderbilt brought a lot of energy to them on defense and should have stayed on the floor. I'm just trying to debate in my head, what would my closeout lineup be? Would it be Vanderbilt or would it be Prince? I would really have to see it in practice quite a bit and playing. But I would lean towards Prince. But I like Vanderbilt just the same. But I think it's just because the lack of overall, even though you're not going to ask Prince or Vanderbilt to score, same with like Hachimura, so I could see if they went with Hachimura. But I feel like you would most likely go to Prince because of as the ball is moving around, Prince is a guy that like will take the shot. Now I wouldn't count on him to make it, but he's just a better offensive option, meaning like your primary guys, if they have to go to a second and third level, Prince is more likely to be that guy down the stretch where you're like, hey, he scored 2 points in the fourth quarter on the one shot that he took. Where D'Angelo Russell, you're like, he missed the 2 shots that he took in the fourth quarter and had a horrible turnover and a horrible shot, something like that. So I think this team is a title contender. As hard as that, I hate saying it. God. And I know that's easy because they were there last year, but it's just they're a Final Four team, and I hate it. But that's what it is. All right, moving on. Surprise sleeper team here in the West during the regular season, the OKC Thunder, which they should just move back to Seattle, but here we are. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Giddey, Dort, Williams, Holmgren. What do I think about this team? With the other Jalen Williams, Trey Mann off the bench, Cason Wallace. I think what this is me kind of projecting that this team's going to be healthy the entire season. They're a young team. They're going to be playing hard. So I think you're looking at a team that could sneak away with like 50 wins this year. Now, if they dropped back below that, I wouldn't be surprised either. But I think the Lakers, the Suns, the Clippers, the Warriors, all these teams are going to be trying to float through, right? You got some miles on these guys. They're going to try to get to the playoffs. I think this is a team that they're going to be trying to win every game, every night. I think they're going to just turn these guys loose and run up and down the court. And so I don't necessarily think this is these guys are better basketball teams at this moment. Your tablet's charging. But I think this is where they slot in as where they're going to end up. I know. You have a meeting in 10 minutes, so you're going to go sit and wait for 10 more minutes, and then we've got a meeting. That's enough. Go sit on the couch then. I'm going to finish up. So, and that's why the Kings, I have them at the 2 spot as well. These two teams aren't title contenders. These are just regular season. Kind of like when the Hawks years ago finished as like the number 1 seed in the East. You've got young teams. So the Hawks are looking at Fox, Herter, Barnes, Murray, Sabonis, Davion Mitchell, Malik Monk. Oh, man. I don't like Len, McGee. Duarte's on this team. I think this is a team that, their guys are going to stay healthy during the regular season. They're going to win like 50 games, 52, 48, and I think they'll end up, just because their team is going to be healthy, playing hard because of youth all season long, that they're going to end up in, if they were the 4th seed in the West, I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe the Suns stay healthy, stuff like that. You saw the Warriors beat them in the playoffs last year. I don't think the changes that they made really are enough. If I had to bet again, if I had to play that series again, I would bet on the Kings, I think, to get them this year. But that's because I think the Warriors have aged out. And so with that said, I think that these, again, not a title contender. This is a regular season award. And then we'll get to... Yep, that's a pencil. Or is that straw?
It's the pencil.
Yeah, this is a straw. Here you go. And then the top spot in the West, which is pretty consistent for everyone, the Nuggets. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it because I'm kind of burned out at this point. Jamal Murray, Caldwell Pope, Porter Jr., Gordon, Jokic. I was surprised Porter stayed healthy towards the playoffs. They kind of or in the finals, they kind of took his minutes down a little bit. Obviously, Brown is gone. So then Christian Brown is going to play more. You know, if they finished third in the regular season, you want some chips?
Yeah.
If they finished third in the regular season or something like that, I wouldn't be surprised either. No surprise, they're a Final Four pick, right? Which I know it's pretty, like, I'm basically picking the same teams that finished in the Final Four last year. It's like my potential Final Four of Denver, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, and Boston. So this is like chalk. That's not typically how it plays out, right? But I don't see enough moves from other teams, and these teams got stronger when the other teams didn't do anything. And I don't see the Kings. I don't see the Thunder sneaking in. I don't see the Timberwolves sneaking in. Matchup wise, you could find, like, if the Clippers stay healthy or the Suns stay healthy and the matchups are just right, where maybe Denver and Los Angeles have to play each other earlier in the playoffs, and so then Phoenix or the Clippers get to play like a Kings in a round 2 to then get to the Western Conference Finals. I think that's where you see some of these other teams are going to sneak in. So, like, all of a sudden we have like a Denver and Phoenix Final Four with Milwaukee and Philly on the other side, or Boston and Philly. I think that's where you would see the variation, is just depending on the matchups and how that works. If chalk were to work out, Milwaukee and Boston are my Final Four. Denver and Los Angeles are the Final Four. It's all matchup based. If I think Boston beats Milwaukee, I think Denver beats LA. So then you're looking at Denver and Boston in the finals. And I think, does Denver... Yeah, I think Denver wins that matchup. Now, where's the alternative route, right? I know I'm getting way ahead of... I'm just doing finals picks now, like in October. Do I think there's an area where another team sneaks in? I'm looking at these teams, and what's the path for the Lakers to get to the finals? I think the path for the Lakers is somehow... I don't think any of these other teams... This would be the path for the Lakers to get in. Phoenix stays healthy, right? And they play Denver in the second round, and Phoenix sneaks by Denver. Like, Kevin Durant gets hot, they sneak by him. I don't think that's going to happen, and then all of a sudden you get a Phoenix versus LA matchup in the Final Four, and that's where I think LA then would get by Phoenix. And so sort of that, like, because the reason why is the best player on those teams is more similar to like how LeBron plays, and I think that's where he gets that matchup advantage, as opposed to having just a big that just eats up the game for Denver, which kind of neutralizes what LA wants to do. And so I think that's the path for LA to get to the Final Four. I think if LA gets to the Final Four, I think that would be the opportunity for the East. So if LA gets to the finals, I think Boston beats LA in the finals. I think LA beats Milwaukee in the finals. Yeah, I do, which is weird. But yeah, right off the top of my head, going in, if LA versus Milwaukee was the finals, I would hate it, but I would choose LA. If Boston versus LA, I'm choosing Boston. If Denver versus Milwaukee or Boston, I'm taking Denver. If Phoenix or any of these other teams sneak in the West, I'm taking Boston or Milwaukee. Any other of those teams in the West, if like the Heat pull it out of their ass again and get to the finals, I'm taking the West. So I think the only way that a Eastern Conference team wins the championship this year is if the Lakers or the Suns or anyone else makes it to the West. I think Denver would win if they make it to the finals over all these teams. I think Milwaukee is a better matchup for Denver than Boston. Do you guys see what I'm saying there? Like where all these matchups, because that's really what it comes down to. Milwaukee's path to a championship is through LA. Boston's path to a championship is through LA. Denver would be the favorite in any situation, with Milwaukee probably giving the most resistance, even though technically Boston would be a different play style for them with Tatum and Brown, sort of that more versatile role. But I'm not a believer in Porzingis and stuff like that, and so the size factor for Boston really comes in. So I think that's where Milwaukee is a better matchup. So I think you're looking at Denver the favorite, Milwaukee, Denver, LA, Milwaukee, Boston. And so again, Denver's the favorite. LA has a LA over Milwaukee. LA loses to Boston. Boston loses to Denver. Boston beats LA. Boston and Milwaukee, who knows what happens there. I think Boston has Milwaukee's number, but if another team sneaks in. So it's sort of like there's not this tier. It all is this matchup conditionally. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Okay, out of my top four, so I've got Milwaukee, Boston, Denver, and LA, who are like the dark horses to sneak in. On the West, it would be Phoenix. In the East, I don't think it's the Heat this year. I don't think it's Philly. Oh, God, I'm not putting the Cavs in there either. I just don't see a path for these other teams. I guess the obvious answer is Philly because of Embiid. And if they're able to move Fat Boy for something else, that would be a big deal. So I guess sleeper would be Phoenix, Philly, which again, wow, I went chalk. But that's just kind of the way the NBA is. So we'll see how it plays out. I would love to see the Heat sneak in again, but I don't think that's happening. But if you're Boston and you run into the Heat in the second round, you know you're sweating that really bad again because you're like, oh, crap, the Heat are coming in. But I think they're a little too depleted this year. So, everyone, that's my NBA preview for the year. I'm going to get this up on YouTube. Hopefully the Likeness Monster checks this out and comments down below. It's your man, the Mega Power TV. Let's go. Game 1 tonight, boys. Let me know what you think. Appreciate showing me some love. My voice is shot.